Rod Serling's popular sci-fi series, The Twilight Zone, ran for 5 seasons between 1959 and 1964. Ranked amongst the most successful TV series of all time, it had a reputation for suspenseful, mind-bending narratives that ended with a clever, unforeseen twist. The Twilight Zone has since been remade 3 times as TV series and twice as a movie, as well as live theatre and radio. There have been board, pinball, video, computer and virtual reality games, comic books, novels and anthologies. There's even a Twilight Zone theme park attraction at Disney Studios in Orlando, Paris and Tokyo. Before each of the original episodes, Serling delivered a cryptic monologue setting the stage for the characters and events about to unfold, and reminding viewers that they are about to enter another dimension, one not only of sight and sound but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land of imagination. One episode opens with a young woman named Janet recovering in hospital from a medical procedure. It is in fact the 11th and final such procedure aimed at correcting a childhood affliction that left her horribly disfigured. The stakes are high because in this society those with physical deformities are exiled to a faraway place. After struggling with her memories and anxieties, she persuades a doctor to remove the bandages. But as she is unbound, the doctor laments that the procedure has failed, and Janet's appearance is tragically unchanged. Whilst Janet cries out in despair, the camera slowly pans to her face, and we see she is in fact entirely normal, even beautiful. In a final scene, we see the doctors and nurses, previously concealed by shadows and camera angles, and they are the ones with grotesquely misshapen and frankly frightening faces. Now we know why the episode is titled Eye of the Beholder. It's a play on the cultural relativity of aesthetic judgments. Who is beautiful? But it also touches on the othering and ostracizing of some people, and the trauma of feeling different and excluded. In today's Gospel, Jesus encounters a man suffering from leprosy, that age-old chronic disease that forced people into isolation. Mycobacterium lepromatosis, or Hansen's disease, mainly affects the skin and peripheral nerves, but left untreated can cause progressive numbness, deformities, and disabilities. Though not actually very contagious, it terrified populations from ancient times to modern, and shunning and separation followed. Leprosy is still found today, mostly in Southeast Asia. There were leper colonies in Australia, particularly, though not exclusively, for Aborigines, as recently as the 1980s. These places were called lazarets, in honour of Lazarus, who in another Gospel story was covered in sores but ultimately taken to the bosom of Abraham. The Coast Hospital at Little Bay here in Sydney, later known as Prince Henry, had a lazaret for men. The Peel Island leper colony off Brisbane was visited by the Sisters of Mercy. The lazarets near Darwin were run by the Osh Sisters. Bungarun near Derby was conducted by the John of God Sisters. And the leprosarium on Phantom Island off Townsville was staffed by Our Lady Help of Christian Sisters from Sydney. Governments entrusted this work to Catholic nuns when no one else was willing. The Church was there for the lepers. Back in Jesus' day, there were no nuns and no lazarets. According to the Levitical law, such an affliction, whether true leprosy or some similar disease, meant living outside the camp, quarantined from the community. These poor souls struggled to find food and lodging or work, to maintain human contact and practice their religion. For most lepers, life was harsh and hopeless. Survival depended on help from the few healthy people who cared. In our Gospel, St. Mark tells us that a leper came to Christ in desperation and humility. He pleaded on his knees. Instead of saying, "Heal me, I beg you," he says curiously, "If you want to, you can heal me." It's a request, sure, but also a profession of faith. Only God is holy and whole, perfect and pure. Only God could share that with me and so cure me. Our priests can only endorse a cure from him. But Jesus can cure him. The man is sure. He can. But will he? There's no forcing God's hand. Standing on one leg, spinning around 17 times while reciting Aves, won't compel him. Bargaining with God that you'll be really good from now on if he only gives you what you want, won't buy him. Divine gifts are freely given. Hence the word grace. The man recognises that Jesus has authority to grant divine graces. For the ancients, leprosy was presumed to be a divine punishment for some terrible sin. Rare cures only came after confession of guilt and a prayer for a miracle. The extreme of isolating the victims might seem over the top to us, at least until COVID hysteria hit our community too. But even then, few blamed the flu on sin. But we can appreciate the parallels between uncleanness of body and of soul. Sin is a sickness of soul that spreads easily. It ostracizes us from God and the community. When we are in its grip, we can fall into a cycle of feeling ashamed, unworthy, outside the camp. We imagine God and the church want nothing to do with us. Our soul cries out, unclean, and our heart thinks we will only get worse and contaminate others. We are beyond cure. In ancient Israel, because of the presumed connection with sin, a leper could only return to the community if certified clean by the clergy. Priest and leper were type and antitype, clean and unclean, saint and sinner. Yet serious sickness, like serious sin, was beyond the ability of the priests to cure. They could only certify a change that came from who knows where. When Jesus appeared on the scene and he healed both body and soul, he didn't blame sickness on sin, but he saw the parallels and links. So when he healed, he often absolved or exorcised, and vice versa. If in the weeks of Lent ahead we come to the leper colony of the church, if we come on our knees confessing our weakness and failings, he will heal us. The sacrament of penance is precisely for that. The priests of old could not absolve sin, but in confession, leper meets healer, sickness meets health, unclean meets the cleaner. Christ himself is the answer to our spiritual and moral leprosy. Throughout Serling's Twilight Zone, there's always another dimension, something beyond surface appearances, mostly something dark. But for those on the road to Easter, whatever our doubts, anxieties and hurts, we know that compassion, mercy and self-sacrificing love await us. God sees the beauty within us. The image of himself he planted there, the image of God he will restore. Jesus, you can cure me if you want to. Of course I want to.